I actually had a dream the other night,
Oh,
and because dream is another way that I really work with my intuition, and it was the first vivid dream I've had in a while, and it was after I'd spent an evening with my book, and some of the old stories that I was kind of relinquishing. And in the dream, I was very vivid and I was stood watching over, it was like a giant pool, and in it there was orcas swimming.
mm.
And the first thing I saw was a few orcas swimming, and they actually had advertisements on their dorsal fins.
Oh,
And yeah, and so they were swimming, and then the next thing I saw was another one, and it was a male adult, and he had his dorsal fin was flopping over, so I was like, I know this is a captive orca,
mm,
and he's eating a calf, a
mm,
orca calf, and there's kind of blood in the water, and so it's already quite symbolic. And then there's another shot where there's two orcas jumping out of the water, and I see myself in the dream snapping a photo,
mm,
and the photo is like there's lots of gold color, but it was all about performance and outcomes and like the
mm.
captivity and things like that. And so that's another thing that I've been really like intuiting and listening to in this process. And I do feel it is connected to my writing and so many other things.
Mm.
And when you mentioned that about being sort of attached to the outcome, it's like this was speaking to these performing orcas that were producing a certain outcome for the people watching them.
Mhm.
And so there's more ways for me to explore that intuitively too. So that's another thing that I'm sitting with right now is the intuition coming through the dream.
That
Yeah.
is so interesting, Matthew. What was the feeling you had in that dream?
I, that was interesting because when I woke up, there was a bit of a shock when the male was eating the younger one and what that could mean. But I remember very clearly the feeling that I was experiencing before I was hitting the hay the night before I was
Mm,
going to bed the night before. And so that was, it felt like it was all related to it. And it was around this world that we live in and, sharing our work with the world in such a way that it feels authentic to who we are and that it isn't performative and that it isn't for somebody else, that
mhm,
it is something that comes from the heart. And, even with my creative writing, because that's what I've been working on before going to bed that night, was just these creative blocks
mhm,
and and stories from the past and the pressure I was feeling around writing, where it wasn't writing was a joy for me. It was that writing was something I should be writing. So it was
mm,
laden with guilt. And that underneath all of that was this sense of like a previous experience where I'd written a book and that had been close to publishing. And then that came to an end. And when it came to an end, it meant the people that I was part of, the community I was part of, also came to an end. And so it was like this
mm,
sense of failing at something, meaning that I then lose my community, right? Lose that connection. And so it really moved something deep inside of me. And I haven't made, like, my intuition's been playing around with aspects of the dream and that feeling beforehand and come to some sort of insights for myself, but I feel
mhm.
like there's many other layers still to come um, through that old, yeah, releasing that some old story there. Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe we share this, maybe we don't, but do you have a few more minutes to talk about this?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I had a feeling
Okay.
if I mentioned it that it might, it might,
So,
you might have
so
a perspective too on with your intuition. Because the
yeah,
57, the intuition, that's in Gene Keys, that's your vocation, that's your
that's true.
calling.
That's true. Well, I mean, I have some questions, but first I just want to say that it's interesting that the wisdom keeper of intuition comes in right as you're kind of about to have a corrective experience around a somewhat traumatic creative experience. Like in this original book project that it came into your life because you were already having a lot of success and you were getting a lot of attention and you were invited into a very well-known publishing company and hobnobbing with some really important people, quote unquote, right? And
Okay.
there was, the promise of a lot of accolades and being received on a very large scale, and things were going really, really well. And then there was some kind of a break and a disillusionment and a disillusion, like everything kind of dissolved into nothing. And you didn't just lose the book deal, you lost the future that that book deal was going to open the door to, and you lost some connections, some networks that were both heartfelt but also connected to a potential success story, right? Like I'm just kind of just
Yeah,
painting
yeah, no,
the
yeah,
picture.
yes.
And so, you've been very busy over these past years. You've done a lot of amazing things. The fact that that happened probably had a lot of unexpected benefits in terms of your inner work and the deepening of your own journey and the work that you're doing now. You probably wouldn't be doing it had you had that great success with that particular publishing project. So it's not like there's any regret about it, but I can hear that there's also some like, ugh, there's some uh, pain or maybe some fear around re-entering that
Yeah.
space of writing from your voice, coming out with something that isn't like, oh, I'm doing this on behalf of the Gene Keys Company or something else, but this is Matthew. This is Matthew's myth. This is Matthew's story. You don't have a partner this time. It's really just you. And
Mhm.
how to approach this, having had that painful experience before, in a way where you don't lose touch with the pure joy that is at the bottom of it. Like what really is driving you is this love of myth, this love of embodied
Yeah.
wisdom, this desire to tell stories, right? So I'm thinking about this dream, and I'm going to want to ask you a question about the orca and what the orca means to you, because I think that you have a very special relationship with the orca, and it's interesting that that's the animal that came up. But I do want to just reflect back that I heard first advertising on the dorsal fins,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Right.
this thing about the external gaze, like different ways in which the external gaze is being imposed upon this otherwise wild and free animal sea creature. So and help me remember, there's the advertising, then there's the captivity. Not, and I think in a way that's kind of what happened in that last publishing project. Like there was this free experience, and then suddenly you were almost like under the umbrella of um, this publishing house, and then all the celebrity figures inside of that and all the rules of celebrity and who owns what and copyright and blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting
Oh,
into
yeah.
the details, but like I felt
Yeah, yeah.
a captivity energy in what you experienced before. Suddenly, this
Absolutely.
incredibly new, fresh thing was held captive and you lost control of
Yeah.
your creative baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the eating of the baby, the cannibalism of the baby, which of course ties very much to some of the things that are happening right now in terms of current events and some horrible stories that are
Right.
coming out around
Yeah.
the the killing of innocence, the
Hmm.
eating, the taking energy from the child in order to boost the ego. And so there's a loss of innocence as well. Like and then the
Yeah.
final piece is the performance. And in this dream, you're the one gazing upon the performance and wanting to capture it. So you're in that sense the external gaze. And
Yeah.
I didn't get a feeling like it was necessarily a negative thing. There was something you were watching and appreciating and wanting to capture. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the capture, that like the
Sure. Yeah.
question of capture, right? The gift and the shadow of capture. So I'm feeding this back to you and just wondering if anything arises, and maybe you can start with the orca. Like anything about that you want to share?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Orca is like I could say it's not a black and white relationship with it
Yeah,
because it's a beautiful creature and it's majestic and it's like watching it swim through the ocean and it is a brutal predator, right? It can kill. It can really destroy, and as like it was killing the innocence of this younger one in there. And so we're again talking about universal themes right now, the predator after the innocence in that way. I love the sound of them
Mm,
underwater when they're clicking and talking away and just their communication. I love that they're a pod that sticks
mm,
together. Was really inspired a few years ago by the story of Brave Little Hunter, who was a little orca that, was orphaned in a lagoon
mhm.
and basically one day freed itself from the lagoon, but it hasn't been seen since. But there's still hope that she's out there somewhere. So this resilience, the spirit of the orca, and that there's a real emotional connection. My wedding band has an orca etched onto it. So
Didn't know that.
you can, yeah, my wife has a raven on hers, and I
Mhm.
have the orca on
Wow.
mine. I've always just felt a connection with it. But yeah, it's like it's got the yin yang on the side of its body too. So this whole black and white, it's not wholly good when you see the ways they kind of gather and herd together their prey. It can be quite lethal the way they do it. So
Mhm.
there's some real skills there, but it's from the human perspective, it could look, it's like, oh, I don't like that about them. Can't you just be cute? Can't you just be the cute
Mm,
thing that I see swimming in the ocean and spy hopping and leaping and breaching and playful? But that's humans too. We're the yin and the yang. We're not black and white. We're not wholly good and not wholly bad. And so
mm,
I see a lot of that reflected through this. And the captive piece, I think, is what really stood out. Like
mm,
this was a captive orca that was eating the innocents, right? It was very clear to me it was a captive orca. It wasn't a free orca in that way.
mm.
And and that sense of freedom is something that really does speak to me. And I just had a conversation with somebody prior to this where it was about, that love of seeing creatures. I just want to go into zoos and open up all the doors and let all the animals out. And, there's a real connection for me in that. And the Free Willy story. I don't think I ever watched the movie, but I think just the principle behind it is something that I could get behind.
Mm,
So that captivity and where I felt, like you said, captive, and that there's been moments like from a real kind of vulnerable space of like, what's the point? What's the point in writing something? It could just dissolve again. And even if I do write it and get out in the world, one day it is just going to dissolve again. And so I meet that shadow of entropy within myself. And it's
mm,
like there's that. And and that in itself becomes a gift for the birthing of something new. So I can feel that, the entropy is that closed system, and this is a shadow for anybody who works with the gene keys, it's a shadow of one of the gene keys, and it's one that shows up in my profile several times, and
mm,
it's about the creative process. And so the entropy is like that orca in the cage. It's in that closed loop system. It can only loop around and swim
mm,
around the same, and this is wanting to break free and create something fresh. And so that's been another limiting thing at times in my creative process where I become overthinking, where just like it's like, well, this is just the same thing I've heard here regurgitated and again, and letting go of that attachment to needing to be fresh as well,
mm.
right? Just allowing that freedom to express whatever comes through. And it's like, oh, that does sound like that because, myths are stories that we regurgitate again and again throughout humanity. And then there's slight differences here and there. So that's something else that feels like it's coming through in this experience. But even just talking, I love this talking about it
Mhm.
because this for me is like I can sit and contemplate on my own, talk about like the mind coming into it, but then even the intuition to mention it to you, and now this is surfacing in the conversation. So yeah, I think there's layers to this that are
Yes,
still
so many
unraveling.
layers. And really helpful to anybody who's experiencing some kind of an intuitive impulse and experiencing some kind of block around it or doubt, self-doubt around it, like what's the purpose? It's all been done before. Who am I? Even if I do a great job, I can still get screwed by a publisher. Maybe I shouldn't even go with the publisher because it's all, publishers don't even help their authors anymore like they used to. Like we could go on and on. And so the
Mhm.
question is about how the wisdom keeper of intuition is here to help us get in touch with the freedom. What will free us so that we can stop eating our own, stop cannibalizing and self-destructing through self-criticism, or projecting all our fears into the future about what could happen based on whatever happened to us in the past. How can we liberate ourselves, whether we're approaching research in a more fun way or we're just letting ourselves go wherever we want to go and make a lot of mistakes and eventually kill a lot of darlings and then going right back in there and allowing something fresh to emerge without even holding that thought that anything in the end is truly fresh. Like I had a professor, Mark Fromm, who used to say there are only six original ideas in the universe.
Mm. Yeah,
And
I
we're
think
all
I
just,
heard you
but as long as it's coming through us, right? As long as it's coming through
have
unique vessels, it will reach
its
the
own
people
flavor.
that need it to come through us, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
I would
yeah,
say that's where I did feel captive before, is in a way, back when I wrote this first book, there was so much pressure and people wanted to see a book and I wrote a book and so they were and then this all played out and then this time I've kept it in a way such there's not anybody saying to me, "Oh, I want to see your book. I want you you have to write that." There
yeah,
isn't anybody saying that, and so now I have to be that voice for myself but without that expectation around it. But just that genuine, it's like a detachment from the outcome so that I can truly enjoy the process because
yes,
that's what writing is for, like I love reading because it brings me so much joy and that's what I want writing for me to be. And
mhm,
if I'm in the head with it, it's not. It's just I'm a captive to my own
yeah,
mind, my own black and white thinking in that way. Whereas
yes,
this, yeah, listening to the intuition, allowing it to express freely and trusting it, even if I don't know where it's taking me.
yes. And ultimately, like something my husband and I used to talk about was like the creative process. Like either you're in the circle or you're outside looking in. And when you're in the circle of creativity, it's just, you don't care what anybody thinks. Like, you're not thinking about, is this going to be accepted by a publisher? Is anyone ever going to read it? Is it good? Is it written well or not? You're just like, what's going to happen to that character? Like, like, okay,
Mm,
so, oh my God, what, like you're in the story and you're trying to solve the problems that are
mm,
happening inside the story. You're falling in love with it. You're in it, right? You're totally in it. But as soon as, like, I've had this experience when I'm in it, I'm really not assessing it. Like the outer world, the external gaze is not present. It's just, I'm just
mm,
trying to tell a story and find out what wants to be said. When I step
mhm.
outside, maybe I take a couple of weeks off and then I start thinking about it. I'm like, nobody's going to be interested in this. Or I'll read, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? This is so poorly written. And the inner critic just goes crazy. But as soon as I'm back in, all of that goes away. And
Yeah,
so there's the freedom that I hear you protecting. You're protecting your freedom to be in the creative process by not involving too many people on the outside. I mean, not many people even know you're doing this, right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
trick is, and this is what I'm hoping this wisdom keeper can help you with, is that when it is time to begin sharing, that you stay connected to that intuitive freedom thread. So even in the sharing about it, you're using your intuition and you're enjoying
Hmm.
it and feeling creative, even in the way that you share about it so that you
Hmm.
stay connected to the create. So it's not like, oh, I can be creative in this little hidden cave and nobody's looking at it and now I can feel free. But when I'm out in the world, suddenly now I'm completely captive to the external validation machine, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's just kind of my wish for you. And I'm hoping that this wisdom keeper will help you with that too, all throughout the process, continuing to stay connected to that intuition. Who do you start sharing it with? Who's a safe
yeah.
person to share it with? How do you want to
Sharing the
share?
joy.
What do you want to
Hmm.
ask? What kind of feedback do you want to ask for at the beginning, right? Like, really what I want to hear from you is what you think is working. Like, who are the characters you're really enjoying? I'm saying like something you could be asking for. I'm not interested in negative feedback right now. I don't want constructive
Yeah,
feedback.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
let your intuition support you through the whole journey. And I know it will have a very beautiful outcome for anyone who's touched by this project. I know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's like when I'm doing work with the gene keys for the gene keys for the
Mhm.
dream arc, it's like that's where I really allow my intuition to guide and the creativity. And just today I've had some creative conversations around that and I
Mhm.
can feel the joy in that. And because it's a product I believe in, it's a transmission I believe in, it's offering
Mhm.
something. And right now it's like at the moment I'm focusing on my own creative writing. It's not a story that I'm believing in enough that I could share it with enough people. It's and that's that discernment and that intuition for me as well in this process. Is like, yeah, who are the people I can share this with, and where is this, where is this story going, and what is it for, and where the Orca brings like that emotional component. Because anytime I see that amount of water, I'm thinking it's the emotions are at play here too, and I was where my writing goes is not creative, is when there's no emotion in there. It's just very dry. And so allowing myself to really feel into my own emotions so that that can feed my characters, because
Mm,
that's when I'm in the process and when I want that to it's like, oh, I want that character to move through this.
mm,
Because otherwise, it's like it doesn't even have that tension. It's
yeah.
just mental, right? Whereas having some kind of like tension in the creative process that can translate onto the into the story in some way.
Yes. You can
Yeah.
deepen the characters. Is there a
Yeah.
character that you know of that struggles trusting themselves and believing in themselves?
In this story,
Hmm.
absolutely there is. Yeah. 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 It could be a couple of them. It's a group of boys in it. And at least one of them does, because each of them has aspects of myself, but also of other people that I've met in my
Yeah.
life. All the fascinating people I've met that could form characters in these stories. Yeah,
Yeah. I can't
yeah.
wait, but I can. No pressure. No
Yes.
pressure whatsoever,
No
Matthew.
pressure.